Or I'm just put it in my pocket.
I'd like to reconvene from the closed session to open session. There are no closed session reportables. Danny, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comments. Any person may address the board at this time with either an on-the-agenda item or other matters of interest to the public that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Maximum of 5 minutes allowed per speaker, maximum 15 minutes per item unless otherwise extended by the board. Are there any public comments on the agenda item? Are there any public comments that are not on the agenda?
Good evening, everyone. I think everyone in this room can certainly agree that the success of students should be our primary focus. I think we can all agree that an institution like COS needs money to bring about that focus. And I think we can all agree that if there are opportunities to increase the amount of money coming to COS from the state, those opportunities should be pursued. And that is why last week I discussed with Superintendent Carrizosa the possibility of getting your endorsement via a resolution supporting the passage of Proposition 30 at this meeting today. He responded that you had asked him to not bring anything political to you. Steve Lamar, who was present in part of that conversation, I reminded him that if Prop 30 passes, there is a possibility that COS would be allocated an additional preliminary $3 million. We also reminded the superintendent to let you, the board, know if Prop 30 doesn't pass, there are dire consequences for every community college, including COS. The superintendent responded that he would see what he could do and that I should send him a sample resolution supporting such a measure. And I sent him an example of one that has been signed by a number of boards, councils, and other elected bodies because each of them has recognized and realized the importance of continuing higher ed. Among those boards are CSU Board of Trustees, Fresno State Alumni Association, University of California Board of Regents, Glendale Community College, Bay Area Council Business Group, California Alumni Association, and the list goes on. When the agenda for the present meeting was published, I noticed that no such resolution was included. And it is very puzzling that after several years of lamenting that the budget sky is falling and that COS will be broke in the nearest future, you did not make the effort to possibly bring about some of the financial relief that you keep asking the associations to shoulder through concessions. It is a mystery why you would not rally your constituents to help COS, but instead let the specter of draconian budget cuts become more of a reality. If Prop 30 doesn't pass, there will be budget cuts that could range from $300 million to $800 million total. Severe enough, even at the lower figures, that smaller districts will need to be absorbed by larger districts. Severe enough for massive layoffs, severe enough to cause total disruptions to student successes. It is sad that you could not step outside of your "we need concessions from employees to continue functioning" mode long enough to examine why passage of Prop 30 would be good for the institution and its students. Your choices were simple: help COS if possible, or doom COS. I think many of us would agree that it would have been better to give students every advantage possible and come out in support of Prop 30. Thank you. Any questions?
Stan, do you want to respond?
No questions, just a comment, Ed. I appreciate you making your remarks tonight. I'm going to restate really what exchanged between us, because I think what you shared tonight was grossly over-dramatized, but I'm going to restate. You came to me after our regularly scheduled October board meeting.
No, I came
After
college
our-
council.
After our regularly scheduled
Yes.
college board meeting.
Yes.
So this extreme interest that you demonstrated in wanting the board to take some action, you were already late with regard to what should have been an item we took up at our regularly scheduled college board meeting. What I shared with you was not that the board told me don't bring them anything political. What I shared with you is our board had already indicated to me that these kinds of issues are difficult and they have opposing political views and they are sensitive for public boards to take action on. You said to me, is there any way we can bring something to them now that we do have a special public meeting set? And I said, that's worth thinking about. Send me a sample resolution. And you did, and I appreciate that. It also, for the benefit of the group, happened to be in the midst of our week of accreditation. And to insulate the board a little bit from the implication and the drama we heard right here about how they made some difficult decision to refute the opportunity to help funding, I didn't even make a second request of them. So if you're going to shoulder that on anybody, Ed, you put that directly on me. And I will tell you that it was a judgment call that I made knowing that we were very busy with accreditation, that the week had already, in my work week, had already gotten away from me a little bit, and I apologize for that. But in looking at it, I also felt like if we were going to give that kind of a resolution thought and due diligence, it should have come before the board for a first reading and a second reading, and we probably should have done that. We should have thought about that together and done that before the regularly scheduled meeting of October, not necessarily a special meeting. So I'm going to take full responsibility for that, but I hope I can look all of you in the eye and tell you that personally, as superintendent president of College of the Sequoias, I support Proposition 30. I understand what that means to our college and to our institution. I think each board member has their own individual feeling about that, and boards can come together collectively and take a position. But remember what we're doing here as elected entities when we do this, whether we're a school board, a college board, a four-year college board, a city council, is we're taking action on a resolution that would lend an endorsement, that would then go on to a list of folks that could then be seen and witnessed in terms of our support. I'll open the floor if the board would like tonight to take the opportunity to speak their individual mind on Prop 30. There's nothing that prevents us from doing that. But I apologize if the board didn't have the opportunity to consider it as a board and consider action on it because of the late timing of it and the busyness of the week we had with accreditation. So I don't want us to leave tonight thinking that's a black eye that this board didn't come out in support. That was 100% my responsibility.
John?
I'm going to give a kind of a rambling collection of thoughts. Many people in the state consider Prop 30 and Prop 32 at the same time. Both of those propositions are divisive. Tulare County and Kings County are very conservative places, and a lot of the citizenry don't like the idea of supporting Prop 30. A lot of those same people think 32 would cure the ills of the state by getting rid of the type of influence that occurs up there. Supporting Prop 32 would be very divisive in this college itself. And if we're going to go forward, it needs to be together. We don't need to be at odds with the staff and the faculty and other classified. And we don't need to be making the community mad at us either. And I personally think that the combination of those two issues is divisive. Isn't going to have much effect or any effect really on the statewide outcome of these things. And I endorse what you've done, Stan, is to just stay out of it because those kinds of arguments back and forth just make people mad.
If ASB were to do something to endorse Prop 30, would each one of you be willing to come out and endorse it, or would you like to kind of stay away from it? Like unofficially, of course.
I think ASB is welcome to do whatever they want.
Huh?
I think ASB is welcome to do whatever they want.
Well, I'm not saying like asking permission to do anything. I'm saying if we did, would you guys be willing to come out unofficially endorse it?
Unofficially?
Well, I think,
Basically come out and support us in endorsing Prop 30.
I think 30 and 32, but I guess.
And
the other thing, excuse me, the other thing, Kayla, is that I think what you might be asking, either officially or unofficially, is board members have the opportunity to state their support or lack of support or opinion, as Mr. Zumwalt did, individually. And I think they can do that with you as a member of ASB, separate from them sitting here in their official board capacity.
Yeah, I'm not saying like go out and state it. I'm just saying like if we were to have an event, would they be willing to come out?
Right.
And Dr. Carrizosa, I
It's
appreciate.
Mr., but that's okay.
Okay, thank you.
He's getting the promotion.
I appreciate your comments on that. And it still leaves a question as to why the board itself didn't act sooner, as many of the other boards did. Okay, the money is there, and I appreciate your argument because I do know how you feel about things, Mr. Zumwalt. That it still leaves the students in the lurch, it leaves COS in the lurch, if Prop 30 fails. And I don't think anybody has any idea of how draconian that's going to be. So political feelings aside, that won't be the saving grace.
I don't take my point of view cowardly. I think that it's divisive, and that's the last thing we need on campus. That's the last thing we need between us and the community.
Well, do you think that major layoffs and turning away students and many other things are not going to be divisive?
Your point of view might be valid. Neither one of us, I think neither one of us can speak with certainty how the public thinks and the effects of doing or not doing things.
Yeah, thank
Now,
you.
we would agree that if Prop 30 fails, it's going to have a draconian effect on our budget.
Are there any other public comments that are not on the agenda? All right, budget solvency plan.
Okay. The three items that we wanted to hit on tonight start with a fiscal solvency plan presentation. And again, this goes back to my first opportunities to come to the college and to have conversation with the board and have the board express concern, obviously, over the budget. And wanting now that the interim year had completed and a new president was hired, to be able to put together at least a framework for a possible solvency plan. So what you're going to see tonight is a first public reading of the framework, the general components of a plan. There are some details, obviously, that need to be fleshed out. But in anticipation of the recent accreditation team coming, and the fact that we knew that many of the community colleges throughout the state who were undergoing accreditation were being given either recommendations or outright warnings / sanctions for a lack of attention to their fiscal status and their fiscal insolvency. Knowing all of that, we made it a priority from August through October to try to get the best handle we could on the key elements of our budget, including some things that we had to make assumptions about for future projections. But what interim Vice President Bridgley is going to do tonight is take us through a PowerPoint and a companion paper document that's going to outline our budget and the framework for what could be a solvency plan over the next 2 years. So I'll turn it over to you, Doug.
Okay. Thank you, and a nice job of explaining what I'm going to do. Are there any questions?
The details are all coming up.
Oh, okay. The presentation is set in two pieces. The first, I'm going to say half, but the first part of the presentation deals with where we are right now with our budget and the assumptions that we used in developing our September budget for the current year. The second half will have similar slides in it. The assumptions will change in terms of how do we reach solvency? Because the budget was not necessarily put together with those action plans in place. And you might ask why. Part of the reason why is we have Prop 30 out there. Prop 30 is a little more than $3 million to us. We have a deficit of about 4.5. So the difference between a $4.5 million structural deficit in the year and a $1.5 million structural deficit is a significant change in what the plan would look like. And so rather than jumping in and trying to take actions early, we are bringing this now, and then by the time we meet in November, we will have known what those election results are. So if I might, these are the assumptions that were used when we developed the unrestricted general fund budget. Revenue, again, November temporary tax initiative does not pass. The governor is assuming in every one of his that when they say governor's budget, they're assuming the taxes are passing. We are assuming they are not. That was under that's a conservative way of looking at this. It's also a way that's recommended by the state chancellor's office when we prepare a budget rather than waiting for it to fall on us at a later date. We are saying because we are going with no tax initiative passed, there will be no additional mid-year cuts. So losing the tax initiative would be the only thing we would lose this year. So our budget would align correctly with the final budget that will be coming to us in January. 0% deficit factor will be applied to community college apportionment. You remember last year we got hit with what was known as the February surprise. Essentially, they give us our first apportionment report in February. That's when we know whether our revenue from the state that's being passed through to us is equal to what the state has projected. And last year we were about $1.67 million short. Ultimately, a good number of $400,000 or $500,000 we put back, so we were about $1.1 million short when we reached the end of the year. So, but that's the first time we really know what the state, how the state is doing and how they're going to fund it. Our funding is based again on the cuts, and our funded FTEs will go from 8,261 to 7,661. Those are numbers provided to us by the California Community College League. Revenues unchanged from 2013-14 through 2015-16. There's a slight decrease from 2012-13, about $17,000 decrease. So that's the reason those years would have the same amount of revenue. Step and column increases have been included in this example. And remember, this is sort of looking at where we go if we don't do anything. So step and columns have been increases. Health and welfare benefits have been adjusted to reflect a rate increase of 6.11%. There hasn't been a change in the budget as this half is being presented to reflect a cap on health and welfare. You will recall in September when we passed the budget, we had not implemented a cap when that budget was sunshine. So this is reflective of that September budget. It's just extended another 3 years. The full-time equivalent generated by the district will be reduced from 9,033. That was our estimate at P2 that was gone in June, to 8,509 for 2012-13, and further reduced to 7,891 in future years. The 7,891 represents 3% more FTEs being produced by the district beyond what's being funded.
That's the question.
If you don't mind, let me go through this. As we look at the projections, we're looking at 12-13, 13-14, 14-15, 15-16. That's the general fund revenue. That's the ongoing revenue to the general fund. You'll notice that we have state allocation of $42.9 million. We've reduced that by the 2.7. The total state allocation for our generator FTEs is $40,187,000. The miscellaneous revenue is $2,929,000, and the mandate reimbursement is at $28 per funded FTE. That's a new thing that came into law. That will stick whether the tax initiative passes or fails. That's $231,000 this year. That is based upon the number of FTEs generated last year that would have been funded. That's 8,261. You notice that it does drop as we move forward into these years to reflect a lower funded FTE rate. That's the only change in the revenue as we move forward into any of these years. Top line is just moving that unrestricted revenue forward. And this is sort of how our budgets line up, and we've seen this before, so I'm going to shortcut through a little bit of this. $45 million out of that $45 million, $66,000, we are funding for technology, $922,000 from a one-time source of revenue or a limited source of revenue that's being funded from the Visalia bond. We are funding our certificates of participation for debt owed for the Visalia campus, mostly parking lots and technology. That's coming from the Visalia bond. And we are going to fund $1,347,000 in retiree health benefits. That means our actual ongoing expenses to operate this district 5 years from now would look much more like $47,797,366, because we are transferring the cost to pay for technology, the COPs, and our OPEB, our retiree obligation, to sources of revenue that are not reoccurring. In other words, they don't generate money for us. So that means our budget is actually built on ongoing recurring costs of $47.8 million. If I come over to 1314 so we can see how this works, the $45 million gets moved up. We add to it other adjustments to ongoing budget. That would include step and column. Health benefit caps, realized there was no cap at the time this was put together. Health benefit caps, increases for utilities and or insurance is almost $1.2 million. And again, technology, COPs, and other ongoing operating costs associated with operating COS is $49 million, which for this year gives us a deficit of $5.6 million. Now, as I move through, you can see each year it increases. Why does it increase? Because we have step and column and ongoing increases in each of these preceding years. And for this example, and I will go to this slide, for this example, you will see there's $435,000 to fund step and column each of the 3 years. The health and welfare increases without caps would be $259,000, $271,000, $274,000 of increased cost. If we saw the same type of increases we've been seeing in the past, each year we would see those increases compounding. PERS and STIRS, these are question marks. The reason they are question marks, STIRS can only be raised by legislative action for employee and employer contributions. That's been less likely, although we just saw some changes in the retirement system. PERS can be raised and have been raised about every year for the last 5 or 6 years by the PERS board. So the Public Employees Retirement Board can raise the employer contribution. They cannot raise the employee contribution, but they can raise the employer contribution without legislative action, and they've been doing that pretty much each of the last 5 or 6 years. We've added increases for utilities, for bringing Clarion in 1314, and insurance for Clarion in 1314. That's a big number. You notice it slows down to smaller numbers as we go into future years, because once we get the base, we're just adding an inflationary factor on both utilities and insurance. That's the ongoing cost that occurs to a budget if we do nothing with those. What happens if we do nothing? We have, and this is a slide that was used previous time, we have about $4,784,000 in our OPEB trust in Sacramento. It's just now being moved over to US Bank. US Bank. We have, our Visalia bond has $3 million that has been committed towards COPs and technology that's available to use there. Again, it's a limited resource. It doesn't generate more money. And the district has, if we include all these reserves, including the farm reserve, which is a restricted account, been restricted for a number of years, it's funds that were received from sale of property on Ringwood, that has gone into this restricted reserve for the operation of the farm. Including that'd be $5.4 million. If I take the deficit from 12-13, this is the $4,449,000. Subtract that from those numbers, you can see I get down to $3.4 million, 1.6, and 3.7 as the budget enters 13-14. And this was step and column. I don't extend this further out beyond 13-14 because if this scenario were to go forward with the $5.6 million, the 14-15 number becomes $791,000. They have 5% in our reserve, which is a recommendation from the state chancellor's office. We would require $2.7 million. So we're about $2 million in deficit in our general fund reserve. The Visalia bond is pretty much depleted, and the OPEB would have $2 million that would make another year's worth of payment with that. But essentially in 2 years, if we don't do anything but just sort of let it slide the way it is, we've reached the end of our line. That is the framework. That's what the budget that we passed in September would look like if we didn't do anything. We'll move into the fiscal solvency plan. The fiscal solvency plan takes the same type of operation, and we look at 2012-13 and 13-14. All the information I have read and receiving is that the forecast is whether the initiative passed or not, this year and next year is going to look the same. Either we get the $3.1 million or we don't, but next year and this year's revenue is going to be the same. There's not going to be a change for those 2 years. The 14-15 year, it doesn't have a forecast coming from it, but everybody is saying, don't think it's going to get better in 3 years. 15-16, I know, it's for reference purposes. It's remained the same, but there's not a good forecast that you get out to out a third or fourth year. They start to fall apart if the economy starts to turn around. How fast it doesn't continue to fail. So 12, 13, 13, 14, and 14, 15 are pretty good indicators, and following that direction that we're about as good as we're going to be this year, whether it passes or doesn't pass. That's the revenue side. So the rules of developing revenue, so you can take the old revenue side and add some of these parts to it. We'll get into a slide that talks about line item reductions, and those are line item reductions that look at instructional, non-instructional supplies, instructional, non-instructional equipment, student health, transportation savings, fuel savings, and contract services. So we're looking at 4,000s, 5,000s, and 6,000s. Everything below employee employment and benefits is essentially going to be in this line. And that, quite frankly, has been reduced pretty significantly, but that's one of the things we have to look at. Expenses to other resources. I spoke at the last board meeting. MA is a Medicare reimbursement. We have some reserves that are in Medicare reimbursement. We've given that to some departments and they've built up reserves. As we are using our reserves, we're going to suggest those departments look at their reserves, and rather than buying above and beyond, to use that to pay for any encroachment they would have on the general fund. There are a few departments that are that way. We look at anybody that has any type of sort of low reserve to say, okay, how long can you last? What do you have to do in order to stay with us for the 3 or 4 years of this plan? Because your reserves need to help as our reserves are helping. So that's one of the places we're going. There's not a lot of money there, but it is treating all those programs in similar fashions. Personnel reductions. adjunct faculty, counseling hourly or other hourly. So it's pretty much anything we have that is hourly might be looked at. Attrition, retirement, and layoff, all employee groups. So that's everybody. Management confidential, faculty, classified, we have to leave all that stuff open. And reassign time and special assignment or reduction in both those. And then the last part of expenditures is the due process of negotiations, and Ed spoke about that earlier. When we look at these types of, I'll use his term, draconian cuts, it's very tough to go without looking at those types of reductions, whether it be Medi-Cal cap and for CSEA, since our other units have been capped, salary decrease, or suspension of step and column. So there will be the large heading. What this does is give you the subgroups underneath that we might be looking at. Here's our ongoing annual increases. You will remember from the previous slide when I talked about ongoing annual increases, there was $535,880 in each of these two lines. We will be proposing to suspend step and column for 2 years, 13, 14, 14, 15. That saves $535,000 each of those 2 years. The proposal is to look at that for 2 years. The third year is placed back in there at $535,880. We are proposing cap, and cap would remain at 0. If you have a cap, then you won't have an increased cost associated to the district, at least at that point. PERS and STIRS remain unchanged. Utilities and insurance, and as we start looking at, so those are all the same. This is new staffing, the grounds, and the custodial position for opening Tulare in July 1. We are going to need some additional staff out there, and we have in this plan put in $120,000 for 2 positions to go out. This number comes down from $1,175,000 to $500,000, and these others come down about $600,000–700,000 each. This one, the 685, has gone back up from 150,000 or so because of the addition back of step and column from this 2-year suspension. We look at ongoing budget reductions. So if we look at ongoing budget reductions, in the first year, current year, even though we're $4.5 million out of balance, we're looking at making reductions of about $1.5 million current year. That would be in line item reductions, and I just went over what all those would be. That's virtually everything but employees. $362,000. Other expenses that would not go away but be funded from other operating reserves that some programs have. I gave you the example of MA or the Medicare funding. Personnel reductions of $372,000. That would be through hourly or layoff or attrition. So those would be reductions that would happen. And again, we're looking at that in all parts of the campus, not zeroing in on any specific unit. And due process of negotiations is $655,000 for this year. And there'll be more spoke about that as we move into the next part of this presentation. But what we are looking at in these two combined numbers is a benefit cap from all units and a 5% salary decrease from all units. So that's the reason for this note here, and this would be the proposal. So you see we're looking at 1.5 and about a $3 million decrease in ongoing costs. And that's the, and I think it's important for us to realize none of us created this mess. It's sort of the state of the United States, the state of California, and it's been happening over a number of years. If I put all this that I just discussed together, and this is sort of the plan all together, this looks like the slide from before, except there's this box. Here's the $45,066,000, it moves up here. The $44 million in subtotal of costs moves up here. The $41,140,000 moves over here. We're just moving those forward. Ongoing budget cuts, the $1,494,000 that you saw that occurred in this current year, $1,494,000 is being reduced from this amount, is being carried forward, because those are ongoing types of budget cuts, so they will reoccur year after year after year, so that will change our base. The same way with the $3,047,000, it will change our operating cost expenditures each year. We have the $500,000, the $114,000, and again, when the step and column suspension is up, that goes back up to $685,000. So what happens? We have $4.4 million, $3.5 million, $572,000, $1.3 million in deficits. That's different from what we had seen before, which was 4.4, 5.6, 6 point something, 7.2, whatever those numbers were. This balances, it gets us down to our one-time budget resources of this year of almost $3 million and goes into the next year of $457,000 and $572,000 of our one-time budget sources. And this starts to rise because we're adding the 685. So second column comes back in. This is the reason I referenced 2015-16 is for reference purposes. Hopefully something happens to break and improve the economy. If it doesn't, this lets us see where we would be going each year. So where does that all come from? Here's where it comes from. One time, $996 million. OPEB trust, 576 or 996,000, 576,000. The FISAIA bonds, 1,382,000. That's technology and COP. Nothing from our district fund. You get to this year, it's all from the FISAIA bond, 457,000. That's about the cost of the COP. Just a little more than the cost of COP, so some technology have gone in here. And this number isn't going to be rocket science. That's all the money that's left in the FISAIA bond in 2015-16 is now at zero. And we have to use the OPEB trust if we were out of 15-16 in exactly the same position. So you can see these numbers match to our one-time budget deficit before our fiscal year deficit becomes zero. But this is our structural out of balance portion of our budget. If I take these funds, and you've seen part of this slide before, I moved the farm reserve over. That's not inside the district balance. Moved it over. That is dedicated. That's a restricted fund, and sources came in to operate the farm and to make sure that the farm that we operate doesn't become a burden on the district. It should work very similar to our OPEB, our other post-employment retirement for our employees. Is that there should be enough money there that would take care of itself, and we shouldn't have to supplement those costs for retirees or for operating a farm that's been moved over. This will look slightly different. And as you go down, the same available funds, only rather than ending at 13-14 in the whole, we get to the beginning of 16-17 still holding a reserve. The FISAIA bond has been fully expended because we used that in the years that we were plus or minus about 500,000. And the last year, we have to go for the OPEB trust, realizing that when we negotiate other post-employment benefits for employees, there's an obligation to pay those. That's what the trust is designed to do, is to have, in an ideal world, we'd have $10 or $11 million there. It would earn enough return to pay so we wouldn't be absorbing that $1.3 million. That's what that trust is designed to do. This $464 million matches the retiree health and welfare that has not been transferred. That's in a separate fund in our district. So it matches that same amount of money. That's sort of the balance. So we haven't gained or lost hardly anything. The $464 $454,000 is our retiree health and welfare amount that we set aside to fund permanently our other post-employment benefits, our retiree health benefits. And you see that's this number here. So we're not gaining or losing. The board would like to have 6%, 5% is what's being mandated by the state without going on some sort of watch list with the chancellor's office. So this sort of gets us to the last part. So rather than being over the cliff in 13, 14, we are into 16, 17. The last slide summarizes what this plan works at doing. Is maintaining the fiscal integrity of the district, allows the district to serve 3% more FTEs than is funded for by the state, allows for planning and implementation of instructional and student service programs for multiple years rather than always being up and down and you don't know whether you're going to be here next year or gone next year or 2 years from now, reduces significantly the structural deficit of the district, brings employee salary and benefit expenditures to 83.4% of 2013-14 projected revenue, and the projected revenue you saw there was $43.3 or $4 million. That projected revenue is unrestricted general fund ongoing revenue. That's revenue we can count on every year. It does not include the Visea bond, the OPEB trust, because those are not ongoing revenues. It does not include the contribution from the district resources from the district reserve. That's not ongoing revenue. It's strictly layered at ongoing revenue. Many, many years, it didn't make a lot of difference because ongoing revenue and expenses were very close. But now ongoing revenue has been cut by $4.5 million over a couple of years. And so we really do have to look at our relationship with our revenue rather than our relationship with our ability to pay. And I'll say, yes, it relies heavily on the due process of negotiation and attrition, retirement, and layoff to bring expenditures in line with revenue. If 92% of your budget is in salaries and you have to cut about 10% out of it, you have to go for salaries because your fixed costs are going to be there. You have to turn the lights on, you have to clean the building. There's a lot of things we have to do that are fixed costs that are we just can't do without. Develops a reasonable scenario for continued state and national economic downturn. It assumes everything's flat over the next 3 years. We're told for the next 2 years they're going to be flat. Nobody would have projected that we wouldn't be turning around this year or next year, but I haven't seen a lot that says that we're going to be turning around even in the third year going out. So I think that's a reasonable scenario of that. Utilize one-time funds to protect district programs and operations. Once this is put in, then we can look out 2 or 3 years and feel some comfort that we can stay where we are and still have our reserves so that if we know we have to get through 1 year, but we have been getting through 1 year at a time and we've sort of reached the point that we don't have that next year to be able to get through. And it reduces our structural deficit to approximately $500,000 in year 2 and 3 of the plan.
Any questions? You on board? Comments? Okay.
First of all, I congratulate you on having the courage to look to the future when no one really knows what the future is. Yet if you don't try and figure out what the future is, you're just going to be a victim of it rather than trying to find it. I'm very appreciative of the effort you went to try and get a handle on what's likely. Now, your assumptions here, though, don't have any provision for any more surprises from the state. That's correct?
That's correct.
So if we do get surprises from the state, well, then we'll have to look at the things
We need to revisit and see if we can still hold with what's here. But it does allow us a little wiggle room whereas we had none before.
So it also looks like somewhere around 2017 or 18 or somewhere out there, if everything remains flat, we eventually do go broke. So your assumption then is that surely 5 years out or 6 years out, there'll be some kind of recovery with this particular plan.
If you want to talk about my assumptions, that's the way the plan has been put together. But my assumption would be that each year, or when some economic change occurs, but at least each year, we have to look out 4 or 5 years to be prepared.
Oh, of course, because nobody in this room knows what the government legislature is going to do next week, let alone 4 years from now. So this is something obviously we've got to look at every year.
But, and this is assuming that Prop 30 does not pass.
It's taking the worst case scenario, it does not pass. And that's the $3 million or so.
Okay, so your recovery plan gets us out to a further date. So hopefully the world's different then. But yet doing nothing, we go out of existence before that's possible. Is that the way to put it?
That's a fair way to put it.
Thanks.
Any other board member questions or comments? Any questions from the audience?
I have a question about the University Prep High School and the VIX programs. I noticed they weren't mentioned in there at all, and I've heard people at different points discuss that they are cost neutral to the college, and all of our research shows that that's not actually the case, that they are cost neutral. I'm not noticing any changes in VIX. I know we leased for 3 years the Tulare Center at $100,000+ a year in advance when we had money in the capital projects funds. So we pre-expended that money when in times like now we could use some of those kind of funds. And so I'm curious as to, it seems like the employees of this college are having to, like Mr. Sent said earlier, foot the bill for decisions that were made by the board regarding past issues. UPHS, University Prep High School, I understand it's politically beneficial for the community to have that, but there's no way that program is cost neutral to the campus. How are those programs going to be impacted, if at all? I know those are kind of favorite programs, politically speaking, for the board, but are those being looked at all? Are you looking at everything?
We're looking at everything. When you look at this number, these are purposely broad, and I think we have to look at everything.
Because I hadn't seen them up here mentioned at all, the University Prep High School and the Business Industry Community Services. I know several years ago when the economy turned down, one of the first programs, and I don't want to see any programs go, but one of the first ones to go was, they called it Community and Corporate Ed at the time. But it seems like it's sort of a protected program. That is my imagination.
So you referring to our charter schools? Is that what you're referring to?
The Business and Community Services, VIX.
He's referring to
Right.
the contract education, community education that Luann Waldner, Debbie Castro are involved in. And not the University High School, I mean, University High School is something separate.
Page 9 actually mentions VIX. It's part of the expenses to other resources that we let be paid by VIX going forward.
Right, but what I think what Doug was saying earlier is in those large number categories, the answer to your question, Kevin, is we haven't itemized all of that yet, but yes, programs like VIX and like University Prep High School, if they truly aren't cost neutral, this is the time to look at those additional kinds of expense shifts, especially to programs that might be accruing some sort of a internal budget, line item budget reserve.
And we've invested a lot of money out at the old TCO Center, when I know we're kind of hooked into that now. And I know some of that was bond money, but I know a lot of it came from unrestricted funds, the way you guys would call them, unrestricted. And so it's like we're hooked into that at hundreds of thousands of dollars, and some of the cuts that we're making to the employees on this campus are equal to that. And I'm not beating up the community services program, because I used to teach in that program and I fully support it. But when it comes down to cutting 4-credit classes for our students, it seems like we're cutting 4-credit classes before we're looking at those types of cuts. And again, I hate to even talk about cuts, period. And so I guess that confuses me, just from a business standpoint.
John?
I think everything's on the table, but if you characterize something that's not true, you characterize the University High School as political thing that the board, that somehow comes to the board. That's not a fair characterization. It wasn't our idea. If we came from the academia of the college and we just approved it, I think everything's on the table. But please don't characterize that as a pet project of the board. It's not.
Then I don't think I said it was the board's pet project, did I?
Politically favored.
Politically favored.
But did I say the board though?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well then I apologize for that. But I know that campus-wide, it has been politically.
Lori and I
favored.
didn't even want you to be talking about
I'm politically favored, so I got to know what it is.
My apologies to the board then. But I guess part of that comes from the idea that we, you know, as the lower echelon of the employee hierarchy here, we assume that the board is familiar with everything. It seems silly to me that the board wouldn't even know what the University Prep High School is, yet we have this huge.
Oh, no, we know what it
And
is.
the public think we're familiar with everything you teach in your class. Both observations are not valid.
And they think we know every one of you teachers too. You know,
I
and we don't.
wish- I
We
wish
know
that-
the ones that show up here, basically.
I wish that were true.
The point, though, to respond to your question is, in those total dollar numbers, all of those things will be reviewed, need to continue to be reviewed. And I don't know that it's completely true. It's maybe not the complete context to say that we haven't looked at programs like VIX or others as opposed to 4-credit programs. I think we've tried to look at it all, but I think the FTES that wraps itself around the biggest part of our budget comes from that academic credit-based program, and that's where our unit funding is being reduced by the state. So we have to look there, and then in addition, we've got to look everywhere else. But we have to look at both, Terry. We do.
Any other questions? Okay. Item 2, district's initial proposal regarding successor contract with Costello.
Okay, the second item tonight is to have John Bratch give us an overview of the interests that we would like to sunshine for the new round of negotiations with the College of the Sequoias Teachers Association. And I think the idea about combining it with the fiscal solvency plan is hopefully to see how this first step toward negotiations, because we also negotiate with CSEA, and we also obviously have management employees who are going to be affected in some way by changes, but to see how the negotiable or personnel parts of it start to work together with the fiscal solvency plan. Yes, sunshining is a legal term. Oh, you want to explain it, John?
Sure.
Yeah, sorry.
It's the first part of negotiation. Before you officially start negotiating, you got to give the public an opportunity to see what each side wants to negotiate on, and then allow the public an opportunity to respond to what we're proposing that we negotiate on. So what we're going to do is tonight, the board, first of all, to acknowledge receipt of the district's initial collective bargaining proposal, and also announce that this proposal will be available for public review at the Office of Human Resources from now until our November 13th meeting, where we will have a public hearing. Again, as I mentioned, this is the first part of negotiations. And what I'm going to do in my little presentation now is just give you a brief overview of what the district is hoping to accomplish in the next round of negotiations. Our existing contract expired on June 30th, 2010. The past couple of years, we've been trying to negotiate a settlement. However, it was unsuccessful, and we went through the due process portion of negotiations. And as the board is aware, on September 10th, 2012, the board imposed a cap on health benefits for Costa. Well, here we are again, and it's entirely new round of negotiations. We're starting fresh. This is the first part. This is the district sunshine proposal. If you go to page 2, I'm going to skip a portion, most of page 1, only because Mr. Brinkley covered the district's financial situation in depth, and I don't want to reiterate what he's already discussed. So going to page 2, the district has met and determined that we are completely free to negotiate on 12 dates in November, and we are completely free to negotiate on 11 dates on Fridays from 8 to 5. And basically, what we're attempting to do here is just get the ball rolling and get the opportunity for both sides to get together and begin negotiations. And we thought it'd be convenient if we let the Faculty Association know what dates we were available, and those are the dates that we are available to negotiate. As to the actual sunshine proposal, I'll go over briefly what it is the district hopes to accomplish. And first thing I want to start off by stating is that the district initial proposal is for a 2-year bargaining agreement. That would encompass the 2012-2013 academic year and the 2013 and 2014 academic year. The first, going down to Article 4, the district is proposing that we limit language within Section 4.1, which states that the district must maintain any benefits or professional advantages enjoyed by faculty as of the date of this agreement. The district is proposing that we eliminate this language. Going on to the workload, Article 8. Specifically, the current master agreement has a section regarding non-teaching faculty such as counselors and librarians. The district is interested in opening up that section and further clarify exactly what it means and what the schedules shall be like for non-teaching faculty. The district is interested in being able to establish a work schedule of non-teaching faculty, as well as the work requirements of the non-teaching faculty. Moving down to Section 8, the district is interested in limiting the amount of overload full-time instructors can teach. Right now, full-time instructors can teach as many classes as he or she desires, but the district is proposing that we limit that to 1/2 of the instructor's full-time load, which in other words, they could teach 7/2 LHEs of overload. We would propose to limit that. Moving on to class scheduling. I know this is a sore point. Several years ago, we negotiated successfully language on class scheduling. However, the language back then was geared more towards a single campus than it was a multi-campus district. And as a result of that, the district is interested in opening up the language within Article 8 on class scheduling so we can account for the opening of Tulare in January of 2013, as well as the already open Hanford Center. Moving down to Section 8.2.10. We included language in 2006 or 2007 regarding distance education into the master agreement. And within that language, it indicated that after 2 years of having a distance education program, the district and Costa would get back together and evaluate to see how things are going. Unfortunately, we never did meet to discuss the direction of the distance ed program, so the district is merely requesting or reemphasize that we would like to discuss how the distance ed program is going and if any changes are necessary. Moving down to Section 8.6. Right now, in Cost of Master Agreement 8.6, there is a table, sort of a convoluted, kind of confusing table about how to calculate large class size. The district is interested in simplifying that table quite a bit, and we would be interested in paying a flat stipend for the amount of teachers, the number of students teachers teach beyond 40 students. So we would like to get rid of the entire table and move towards a flat stipend dollar amount based on the number of students an instructor has in his or her classroom. Moving down to salaries, Article 9. the district is proposing that effective February 1st, 2013, there be a 5% across-the-board salary reduction for full-time faculty. We also propose that any language that is outdated or expired would be eliminated from the current master agreement. Another proposal of the district is to suspend step and column effective July 1st, 2013. Also, as to salaries, the district is proposing that instead of receiving pro rata pay for teaching summer schools, when summer school does get reinstituted at COS, that instead faculty are paid on their overload salary schedule. Moving on to section 9.2.3, the district is interested in adding language to a reassigned time and adding language that indicates that reassigned time will be provided so long as a program actually exists. So if a program is eliminated from the district is not obligated to pay for that reassigned time. Finally, with regards to salaries, Article 9, the district is proposing to eliminate the section 9.2.3.12, which is a faculty on special assignments. This was negotiated in the last round of negotiations. The district is interested in eliminating that section altogether. As to employee benefits in Article 10, the district would like to maintain the current health and welfare cap that was adopted by the Board of Trustees on September 10th of 2012 via Board Resolution 2012-24. Additionally, within employee benefits, the district is proposing that section 10.2 is eliminated. This section provides that if a faculty member exhausts all of his or her paid leave, that they will be entitled to 12 additional months of district paid health and welfare benefits. The district is proposing that be eliminated. Finally, as to employee benefits, the district is proposing that we cap the stipend amount a retiree receives to pay towards his or her Medicare supplemental plan upon retirement. And also we would like to limit the number of years a retiree actually receives this Medicare supplemental plan upon retirement. Moving on to Article 11, which is working conditions. Presently, Article 11 and Article 8 are somewhat inconsistent with one another. And as a result of the fact that the district would be interested in renegotiating language in Article 8, the district would also be interested in renegotiating language in Article 11 to make the two consistent with one another. But the bottom line is, with regards to Article 11, the district is hoping to, just in a very broad statement, determine the classes that will be offered at each class and be able to designate the fact that full-time faculty positions will be at those campuses. And also, the district is interested in guaranteeing that full-time instructors are indeed at all campuses. Moving on to Article 12, which is leaves. The district is interested in reducing the number of sick days faculty earn from 1.4 days per month to 1.0 days per month. On to Article 15, which is conferences. Currently, faculty are allocated $40,000 a year for conference attendance. However, in Article 15, Section 6, it indicates that the cost of travel is not allocated against that $40,000. The district is interested in having that, the cost of travel be a part of the consideration when $40,000 is considered. Article 17, which is the grievance procedure. The district is interested in adjusting the language of 17.1.1. Currently, grievances can be filed on violations of the master agreement, any law, any regulation, or any board policy. The district is interested in narrowing that down to just violations of the master agreement. So we will be requesting that certain language be deleted from 17.1.1. Also, we would like to add language to the grievance procedure in that all grievances must be specific and indicate, for instance, the alleged violation of the master agreement, as well as the facts supporting that allegation, and finally, a proposed remedy to resolve the alleged grievance. 17.3.4 on grievances, the district is interested in deleting language which indicates that the arbitrator rules on whether a case is arbitrable or not. Finally, the district is proposing that new language be added to 17.3.8, which states that an arbitrator does not have within his or her jurisdiction to award damages, financial reimbursement, or other monetary remedy. Finally, as mentioned previously, this is a proposal for a 2-year contract that will expire on June 30th of 2014. The district is interested in having reopeners following the 2012-2013 year, and that would be on salary, benefits, and 1 article at the discretion of both parties. And we would ask that the sunshining of these reopener languages occur on or before April 30th of 2013. With that said, I'll just reiterate what the purpose of tonight's presentation by me is, and that is that the district acknowledge receipt of this sunshine proposal by the district, and that it be included within the minutes, and also announce that this sunshine proposal is available for public review at the Office of Human Resources Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, and also if the board would finally announce that there will be a public hearing on November 13th of 2012 for the public to have an opportunity to discuss their thoughts on this.
We acknowledge receipt of the initial proposal to Costa, and there will be a public hearing at the next board meeting on November 13th.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
We actually have a resolution on each section.
No, I think we're fine.
No,
You're right.
no resolution.
Now we'll do a resolution here on the next one. On the resolution number 2012-27, authorizing COS and Costa to conduct the next round of negotiation in the public. Mrs. Cardoza, would you read that resolution, please?
Whereas under the Educational Employment Relations Act, contract negotiations are customarily conducted in private and considered confidential unless the parties mutually agree to bargain in open public sessions. And whereas an estimated 92% of the 2012-2013 District General Fund ongoing revenue is expended on employee salaries and benefit compensation, and the allocation of this significant portion of the budget is guided largely through the terms and conditions of the master agreement achieved through contract negotiations. And whereas state budget cuts have resulted in a significant loss of funding for community college districts, and this reduction in resources has intensified the potential for the interests of the district and Costa to conflict. And whereas the district and the district board of trustees desire to be open, honest, and transparent in conducting negotiations in order to restore trust and achieve a negotiated agreement on the master agreement between the district and Costa. And whereas such openness and transparency clarifies miscommunication and demonstrates commitment to the public access of facts and information. And whereas it is important for the public and the media to observe the bargaining process as a matter of public interest and oversight of its public funds and officials, including district administrators and Costa representatives. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees and administration desire to conduct contract negotiations by and between the bargaining teams for the district and Costa in public, and to open the process, facts, and information to public observation. Be it further resolved that the Board of Trustees authorizes the administration to submit in writing to the Costa leadership a formal request for their mutual agreement to conduct all negotiations in open public session.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All right, is there any discussion?
Can you explain an estimated 92% of the 2012-2013 district general fund ongoing revenue is expended on employee salary?
Yes. As you saw earlier, the presentation that Mr. Brinkley made, when we talk about the percentage of our ongoing general fund revenue that goes toward the cost of all employee salaries and benefits, what this is stating again, consistent with that information that you saw there, is that 92% of our general fund ongoing revenue goes toward salary and benefit costs for all of our employees. So
92% of the budget goes to?
not the budget. The budget, remember, Daniel, is bigger. It has other resources in it. It has non-general fund and restricted. It also has one-time monies. When you saw those reserves like OPEB, the other post-employment benefits, that's a reserve account. When you saw Measure I, that's a reserve account. So we put those into the budget, coming out of a reserve, out of a savings. Those go into the budget to pay some of our ongoing costs. But reserves run out, right? So if you pull those out, if you say, don't count those because they're one-time monies, just count the money that comes in ongoing, the actual general fund that's ongoing, that's a smaller number. So the percentage of employee salaries and benefits is larger. It's 92%.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Zumwalt.
Aye.
Trustee Cardoza.
Aye.
Trustee Sherman.
Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming.
I just think. Oh, that's not one. I just need to grab